The NFL is nearing the deadline for franchise tags, and it looks like a handful of players will not be on the free agent market for the San Francisco 49ers or any of the other 31 teams in the NFL, which could make another player available for the 49ers to swing a deal for a certain wide receiver. We'll get into it on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Love that you come hang out with us and make us your first listen of the day. And love that you helped make us the number one sports podcast network here at Locked On, your team every day. It's what we do even throughout the offseason. So some big offseason conversations on today's program. And Croc, it looks like the franchise tag date for deadline for the NFL is right after the combine. So the combine is going to go through this coming weekend, and then March 3rd is the deadline for franchise tags. There's about a 2-week window that started last week where teams can apply the franchise tag to players that they don't think that they're going to be able to get those long-term deals done with that are impending free agents, and they try to keep those players off of the market. And it looks like there's 2 guaranteed franchise tags right now. George Pickens, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, who had a phenomenal year last year after they traded for him from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then star tight end Kyle Pitts, who's a player that, I've talked about here. It's like, what, tight end money is way better than wide receiver money. And to be honest with you, for the Falcons, it's a no-brainer if Pitts is a franchise tag at $16 million, whereas someone like Alec Pierce, who would have the franchise tag at $25 million, right? So it looks like George Pickens and Kyle Pitts will not hit the free agent market. But I want to talk about Indianapolis, Croc. It's the more interesting scenario here because I know a lot of 49ers fans talking about Alec Pierce is that, ex-wide receiver, dynamic downfield monster who was a free agent for the Indianapolis Colts. But according to Tom Pelissero, the Indianapolis Colts do not want to let Alec Pierce hit the open market. And there's there's still a week or 10 days left before the new league year, before free agency actually begins post-combine for these teams to get a deal done. Now, the Colts are fascinating for multiple reasons. 1, because they have Alec Pierce. 2, because they have a quarterback that they're trying to figure out as well in Daniel Jones. And one local reporter in Indianapolis, Croc, said that they could potentially use the franchise tag on one of those players and the transition tag on another guy to try to keep both Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce in-house and continue talking contract with those 2 players. But those are large contracts, especially the quarterback contract, if they're going to get those deals done long-term, and even more difficult on a 1-year basis to fit all those numbers in for the franchise tag. And you have to be under the cap at a certain point, right, to start the year. So you can't throw those franchise tags out there and then just be way over the cap. So you can't carry those franchise tag numbers likely. So they got to get some long-term deals done. But Croc, all that's to be said. If Alec Pierce gets taken off the market because he either does a long-term deal or gets the franchise tag or the transition tag by the Indianapolis Colts, then that will mean the player that currently has the largest cap number on the Indianapolis Colts, not DeForest Buckner, by the way, he's number 2. Number 1 on the list is wide receiver Michael Pittman. And if you go in the Wayback Machine about 5 years, I think one Eric Crocker was pretty high on Michael Pittman coming out of USC. He's a California native, by the way, as well. And that could mean that Michael Pittman, going into the last year of his contract, could be available because the Colts have to cut him or potentially trade him. And I don't think the trade cost would be that high because he would only have 1 year left on his contract, and it's a big cap number. And the Colts would save $24 million by either cutting or trading Michael Pittman this offseason, Croc. So what are your thoughts? And we didn't talk about Michael Pittman in our trade conversations earlier this week or last week or whenever that was. I'm not even sure what day it is anymore. Yeah, that was last week because we had a mock draft Monday yesterday for Croc. Talk a little bit more about Croc's mock as well later in the show. Michael Pittman, Croc, your thoughts as a free agent if he is released by the Colts or a possible trade to bring him into San Francisco to be that starting wide receiver potentially next year next to Ricky Pearsall.
I think he is terrific, and I like that you brought up. I mean, that was a long time ago now. I pulled up some of Michael Pittman Jr.'s stats. He's been in the league 6 years. I believe the same class as Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah. Well, so
Gosh, I
Croc,
can't
real
believe
quick,
it's been 6 years.
going back, it does feel crazy. It's been 6 years. Going back to 2020, the argument for not trading up for, because I remember at the time, I was like, man, did you really need to trade up for Brandon Ayuk when you're sitting there at pick 31 and there were guys like Michael Pittman and T. Higgins available probably later in the first round, and both of those players ended up going high in the second round. And it turned out that,
I want to say not even just high. They were like back to back, 2 of the first like 3 picks in the second round. Like they went right away.
Yeah, let's see here. So we have
Second round guys.
34. Yeah, so pick 34 was Michael Pittman, and so that's the second pick in round 2. And I think T. Higgins might have been the first pick in round 2.
He was, because Joe Burrow was the first player taken, right?
Was that the 2020 draft? Okay, so yeah, there you go. So 33, 34. The first 2 picks in round 2 were T. Higgins and Michael Pittman.
Yeah, so right away. So that just shows like they had that type of ability. And me, I did like Brandon Ayuk a lot. If you go back to some tweets, I talked about how there was even more to get out of him if the Jaden Daniels situation was a little better. Jaden Daniels, I believe, at the time was like a true freshman playing quarterback at Arizona State with no offensive line there. So it was kind of tough sledding. But Brandon Ayuk was really kind of freakish athletically, like just jumping over guys, making plays, running off on guys to win games, burning Diamador Lenoir for a crazy touchdown to seal the win against Oregon, right? Like, there was a lot to like about him. But I had Pittman and T. Higgins over Brandon Ayuk. So if you were to tell me 49ers drafted Brandon Ayuk, cool. I really like Brandon Ayuk. I believe even prior to the draft, I did like an in-depth kind of breakdown on where he wins and running the slants, all those things. But I also really like T. Higgins and I thought he played faster, smoother. I felt like that skill set translated to the NFL very well. And then, of course, with Michael Pittman, who I thought for as big as he was, he moved extremely well. He has a big frame, ran good routes, he boxing guys out. And for someone like me who, hey man, I'm looking for the next Odell Beckham, especially at that time, right? Like you want that type of receiver. But T. Higgins and Pittman were very, very, very intriguing in that class to where I had them pretty high. So if the 49ers would have drafted any of those 3 receivers, I would have been excited about it. They drafted Brandon Ayuk, but Michael Pittman, he was good. He did everything. And you look at how his NFL career has played out. There's been some injuries. There's been some concussions, taking some big shots. Big guy, you expect him to handle it. He has been solid. I think you would like maybe a little bit more, like in a perfect world, out of someone who is potentially your wide receiver 1. And maybe that's why they're saying, hey, we're paying him a lot of money. We need to move off of this guy right now. So in that scenario, I could see why somebody would want to trade him. But for the 49ers, I think he'd be very good. He'd be very productive. I think it comes down to the price tag. And we're looking at Juwan Jennings, where I think Pittman is a better receiver than Jennings. And I like Jennings. For the same price, I'm wondering if you say, I'm going to lean Jennings because Jennings knows the system. Jennings is a very good cultural fit. He's going to block his butt off. You don't have to question any of that. And you know exactly what you're getting, and Kyle knows exactly what he's getting. So if you're telling me the money is the same, I go that route. If you're telling me, hey, man, you can get Pittman a little bit cheaper, he actually may be more suitable to be a more high-volume targeted receiver. So there's a little projection there with hoping that his production is more, or at least more consistent with the new team as opposed to what we've seen with the Colts, which the other thing real quick, I know I'm going on a rant here. Their quarterback situation has been terrible.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to factor that in as well, where Brandon Ayuk, not to say has been amazing, but Jimmy Garoppolo fit what the 49ers did and played very well. Brock Purdy obviously took it to another level, and Brandon Ayuk, and playing very well. So the quarterback situation has been more stable and more consistent for the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk and those guys, as opposed to what Pittman has had. And same with like T. Higgins in Cincinnati. When T. Higgins has Joe Burrow, man, he's putting up crazy numbers and he is super productive. So the quarterback could affect it too. Like, you got, was it Richardson? Isn't it the quarterback?
Anthony Richardson?
Florida? Anthony
Also
Richardson.
available, I think, in trade.
Yeah.
Bring him too. Bring him over too. No?
No, stinky. Powerful arm, runs fast. He's stinky though. And Pittman is probably like, nah, get me away from that kind of quarterback. Get me with Brock Purdy and watch what I do. So I like the thoughts of having him. I think he would do better with the 49ers than what we've seen with Indianapolis Colts. But for how much? That's the question.
Let's get into how much next. I want to talk a little bit more about Michael Pittman, who he is, because I think he's a realistic option for the San Francisco 49ers and would not mess around with the top of your draft to bring in someone like Michael Pittman, who could come in and be a stable starting wide receiver potentially for the Niners in 2026. And let's talk need versus best player available draft strategy for the San Francisco 49ers using Eric Crocker's Croc Mock 1.0 from yesterday as an example next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets rolling along and a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, a dinner, man, it's a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. And that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. And they're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Recipes are simple, but feel elevated, even restaurant quality. In fact, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. And for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Thanks again, everybody, for making us your first listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And the offseason does not exist for the everydayer club. So join the group chat to talk 49ers, talk draft, talk trash to other teams if you want year round, and get every episode of the show ad-free. Just go to lockedon49ers.supercast.com to sign up for the Everydayer Club or hit the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Croc, talking about Michael Pittman, just to remind folks who Michael Pittman is, who he was coming out of the draft in 2020 out of USC, big receiver, 6'4", 223 pounds, ran a 4.52 40-yard dash, 36.5-inch vertical, and some really nice agilities for a receiver his size, which is why I think he is a nice fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense. He was sub 7 seconds in the three cone, 6.96, 4.14 in the 20-yard shuttle, and he's a player that can break off a route. He's not just your I'm tall and I'm going to run down the field and be a jump ball specialist. And I think he can. One thing Kyle Shanahan wants is, and the reason he doesn't like receivers who are just like, I'm just a linear X and that's it. He likes his receivers to be able to play all three spots. And I think Michael Pittman can do that. He can play the X spot right away for the 49ers, but he can play the Z. You can line up as a big slot and he can do some things. He's not dynamic, but he's just a really good player, Croc. And he's put up big time seasons in the NFL and he's still only 28 years old. So he'll be 28 the entire season this year. And he is, I think for the entire season, let's see, when's his birthday? October. So he turns 29 during the season in October. So he's 28 currently. But he's had a 1,000-yard season in 2021. In 2023, he had 1,152 receiving yards. He had 7 touchdowns last year on 111 targets, 80 catches, 784 yards over the course of 16 starts. So I think he's a really solid player. He comes in, he can be a number 2, and we've talked about it before. As maybe the 49ers offense doesn't need a number 1. How about a number 2 in Michael Pittman and another number 2 in Ricky Pearsall? And you know what? Draft another guy and let everybody battle with, Demarcus Robinson and Cowing and Watkins, and bring in another guy that you don't have to draft in the first round who can also compete, and see who comes out on top for number 3, number 4, and Sky Moore involved as well. So I really like the idea of someone like Michael Pittman because I don't think it'll cost that much. You could restructure the contract if you don't want to pay him that much. And you were talking about comparing him with Juwan Jennings. I think being in Kyle Shanahan's offense has helped Juwan Jennings. I think being in the Colts offense has hurt Michael Pittman. I think Michael Pittman's on a different tier than Juwan Jennings. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit for the 49ers.
I think if you just told me, all right, hey, you're starting a team today, you got to pick between Juwan Jennings and Pittman. I want to say Pittman, but if I'm starting a team, that's tough too because I want a certain dog. I want a certain mentality.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're just saying, okay, who's going to be better for my quarterback, I would say, okay, I'm going with Pittman. But when you have to factor in everything, and Kyle has to factor everything in. Kyle has to factor in. He's a little bit old school, a little bit throwback. He wants his receivers to be have a certain type of mentality and get nasty. And Juwan Jennings, like Draymond Green, they're those habitual line steppers. Draymond Green steps over the line a lot. I think Juwan Jennings steps over the line a lot as well, and it really gets under the skin of his opposing defensive players that he's going up against. So I don't think it's as simple as just saying who's the better guy you would rather throw to. I think there's so much that Jennings brings for a certain price, because
right.
you're not paying Draymond Green. Well, he ended up getting a lot of money, but you're not paying him what you're paying Steph Curry or even what you're paying, Clay, right? Like those are your guys. And then there's, okay, my third option, and he does some, smart IQ, is versatile, does a little bit of everything, doesn't do one thing. Well, he plays defense great, right? Juwan Jennings, great at blocking, does that. And the other stuff is I can contribute with this. I can facilitate. But when you start getting up to, $22+ million, that's when it's like, makes it a little bit more difficult.
Pittman can block too, though. I like Pittman. I think he's a different tier than Juwan Jennings. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit. But I do love Juwan Jennings as well. If Juwan Jennings could just sign that number 3 wide receiver contract and be the number 3, be that big slot player,
right now.
Yeah, tomorrow, easy. But some of the numbers we're talking about, and Pittman's a very interesting option for me. One of the reasons I like bringing in a wide receiver in the trade market. First of all, I think the trade market is going to be robust. You can go back and listen to our podcast talking about all the players that could be available, whether it's Jordan Addison or AJ Brown or any number of players. And you can definitely add Michael Pittman to that list. I think the 49ers can go shopping and get themselves someone who can step in. And it does take wide receivers a little while in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Offensive linemen, wide receivers, you can't expect that they're going to come in and be ready to go and be big time starters in year one. And so you could draft and develop a player, whether it's a first round pick or a later pick. And so I like the idea of bringing in a wide receiver so you don't feel forced to take one at 27. And it's similar at left guard. So you don't feel forced to draft a starting caliber guard early, and you can let the draft come to you. If there's a really good offensive lineman, you take them, but you don't feel forced to do it. So I think the 49ers have some work to do in the offseason. It can't be like last offseason. They've got to I think address some things before they get to the draft so they don't get pigeonholed in certain positions in the draft, Croc. And that brings us to your mock draft and the idea of need versus best player available. And I think we were talking about a little bit off the air. One of the pushbacks from your mock draft yesterday is a lot of people think that the guy you took in round 1, Sonny Styles, might not be there at pick 27 for the 49ers, which is fair, and he might not be. He is projected to go.
Real quick, can I also say,
yeah.
I'm not someone, and I have been this person, but as of late, maybe I'm just too busy for it, coaching high school football, getting that stuff together. But I don't sit around and look at mock drafts all day. So I don't know where someone is being mocked. I see where the mock draft machine thing has him going. And when I watched the film, and I told you after when we got off, if what I'm seeing on film, like this feels like somebody that's not going to be there at pick 27. But It has nothing to do with wherever he's being mocked at. And I don't know where he's being mocked at. So that didn't play a factor into my stuff at all. I don't know if he's going to be there or not. But what I saw on film was someone that if I were doing the drafting, he would be going top 15.
Right.
Depending on how he runs. Which
is important. And I want to continue this conversation next, Truck, because if you are, this happens in every draft. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when I talk about this because I say it every single year. I say it multiple times every year. The real draft is always crazier than the craziest mock you're ever going to see. Last February, who's being mocked number 1 overall? There was a lot of Cam Ward. There was a lot of Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders went in the 5th round, Croc. He didn't go number 1. He went in the 5th stinking round. The real draft is going to be insane. The group think is insane when it comes to the draft. Anyway, we don't know where any of these players are going to go sitting here. You can have a pretty good idea, and maybe some of them you're right about, and some of them you're like, oh, I'm shocked. I can't believe blank fell to the 2nd round. Happens every draft, right? So let's talk a little bit more about that and why you have to be a little bit malleable. You got to be available to maneuver in the draft. You got to be open-minded to where if that player with that grade falls to you at pick 27, you're not holding yourself into a certain position that you can go draft the best player available. Let's get into that idea because I think it's really important next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, thanks to FanDuel, now they're giving you the opportunity to turn that chance turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking which team might make a deep run into the playoffs, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Futures are awesome this time of year, whether it's picking the team to win the championship or maybe a team that's going to grab a conference title. Adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can your pick cash, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Croc. So, do you expect the 49ers to do some work in March? Because last year was like a soft reset. The way I understand it from the 49ers is like, it's not going to be like this every offseason. This offseason is going to be like this, right? Do you think the 49ers are going to be active in free agency? Maybe make a big splash in free agency. Maybe also make a big trade so that when they are sitting on the clock potentially in April at pick 27, that they're not forced to make a swing. And if someone like Sonny Styles, who, by the way, you can say that you think Sonny Styles isn't going to make it to pick 27, and you know what? He probably won't. And he doesn't get to pick 27 in most mock drafts. But I'm looking at NFL.com. Lance Zierlein has him ranked like 19th, 20th player overall. If you think a player can't drop 7 spots from that, then you're out of your mind and you haven't been paying attention to NFL drafts. But whether it's
not just that, real quick, I remember, because everybody knows about my love for Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Minkah, that's right.
I mocked Minkah to the 49ers at pick 9, and people were like, oh, he'll be long gone by pick 9. Like, Minkah will not be there. He's going top 5, 100%. He went pick 11. Now, it's not like he dropped super far, but people had him going much higher than pick 11. Same with Derwin James. I was in that class. Derwin, he was supposed to be a for sure top 10 pick, and he quote unquote failed to pick 17, I believe it was. So, you guys, there's like room for error, give or take 7 picks.
I think Mekhi Lemon is a really interesting one. Caleb Downs is a safety. Just those the non-premium positions too. Running back fall a little bit further than where people think Love is as a prospect. Off-ball linebacker. Styles could fall a little bit where people expect. Safety, Caleb Downs, even though he's one of the better players in the draft, he might fall a little bit further than you would expect, a la Minkah Fitzpatrick. But Croc, there's an interesting prospect with the combine coming up this week. And Mekhi Lemon, the film was awesome. I love Mekhi Lemon. Everyone loves Mekhi Lemon. He's being projected as a top 15, top 10 pick, the first wide receiver by some people. If he does what I think he's going to do at the combine, I think there's a better chance that he's there at 27 than he goes in the top 10. Because when's the last time, Croc? I'm going to ask you this question, and I don't have the answer to it. What's the last wide receiver? And if Mekhi Lemon to me looks like he's kind of short-armed, not very big. He's listed at 5'11", 195, and we know how those heights and weights are never completely accurate. If he's 5'10", 190, and he runs 4.50 or slower, which is what I expect to see from him at the combine, if he runs at all at the combine, but you got to weigh in. So we'll get some heights and weights on him and arm lengths on these guys. When's the last time a guy that was sub 6 feet and didn't run faster than 4.50 went in the first round of the NFL draft?
I'd like to put that through, some type of system analytics to
Yeah.
that out, or has it ever happened?
Not even top 15. I'm talking first round at all. I can't think of one. I'm looking at drafthistory.com right now. And I am looking at wide receivers and where they are drafted. And certainly in the last few years, there's nobody that fits that criteria. So a team's going to really have to trust the tape.
Jalen Reagor, what did he run? How tall was he? He went first round, pick 21.
He probably ran 4.3. He probably ran 4.3. Xavier Worthy set the record for 40-yard dash, right? He was sub 5, or he was sub 6 feet. Let's see. Some people, and all the comps for Makai Lemon are Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua. Those guys were all mid-round picks, though, right? And they're good comps. And those guys should have been first-round picks. I'm not saying Makai Lemon's a bad prospect. I'm just saying I'll believe it when I see a team draft a wide receiver who's not that big and not that fast in the top 15 of the NFL draft. So I think Makai Lemon could be on the board for the 49ers potentially at pick 27. I think we'll see him go a little bit later in some mock drafts, unless he blazes. Maybe he's going to be a lot faster than I expect, and he blazes, 4.4 flat or something at the combine. I just don't really expect to see that based on what I saw on film. I do think he's smaller than a 5'11", 195 as well.
Jalen Reagor at measured in 5'11", 206. So he was thicker, ran a 4.47, crazy vertical jump, 42 inches, crazy broad jump, 11.6.
Yeah.
Really slow 3-cone, which I think we're kind of, you start to kind of look at why, maybe not saying it couldn't work out, but he was a first round guy and didn't have absurd measurables for somebody 5'11" or a little bit shorter.
Here's a good one. He gets compared to Jackson Smith-Njigba. Well, Jackson Smith-Njigba was over 6 feet, and he ran 4.48 at his pro day. He had absurd short area testing numbers, and he still fell a little bit where people thought. He fell to pick 20. Jackson Smith-Njigba. Jackson Smith-Njigba was a better prospect coming into the draft than Makai Lemon even was, and he hit some thresholds. Again, he was sub 4.5 and still above 6 feet tall. And so it's really hard to find that comp. I'm going back.
And by the way, while you're looking at this is not saying that he won't be a good pro or that we don't like him. I like his skill set. I like his game. This is just he's being mocked correctly in around the top 10, top 12 picks. And it's like this profile doesn't get drafted high like that.
Yes.
So it's more about that than if we like the guy. If you told me 49ers able to take him at pick 27, I'm like, oh hell yeah, he's a fit. But top 10?
Here's what's crazy. Every time I encounter a sub 6 foot tall wide receiver in the draft, it's Xavier Worthy. It's John Ross. We're talking 4.2s, let alone 4.4s in the 40-yard dash for those guys. I think the closest one might be, and this guy was a bust, is in 20, now I lost it. Where did it go? In 2020? No, 2021. Where are we at here? Oh, now I lost.
Not Corey Coleman, right? Corey Coleman ran fast.
Corey Coleman ran fast, but extremely fast. Yes. Why can I not find it now? He went to Jahan Dotson. There it is. It was 2022. Oh. He was the fifth out of 6 first rounders, Jahan Dotson. But he ran 4.4s. He ran like 4.42. But he was 5'10 and a half, 180 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, Penn State, right?
Yeah. But still, he ran fast.
You got to be able to run. And I had this argument with, not even an argument. I just posted something about Jerry Rice. If you don't test extremely well, or you don't hit all the check marks on the measurables and all that, it does not mean that teams don't like you as a football player. It's just them trying to see how your game and your measurables and all that historically translates to the NFL. And how much money are we going to give you because what you have translates? And that does not mean that it's going to 100% work. So Makai Lemon can come out and be the best player in the draft. Hell, Jarvis Landry, not the biggest guy or height-wise, but do you remember what he ran in the 40?
It was slow, 4.7 or something like that. Or 6.
4.77.
Oh, God.
I mean, he almost ran a 4.8 and still got drafted second round.
Yeah. Was it second? I thought it was third round, maybe. Late two?
Jarvis Landry got drafted. Jarvis Landry. He got drafted second round, I believe.
Second round?
Jarvis Landry, second round, 63rd pick. Now, late second.
Very late. Yeah, very end of the second. Okay.
Very late second. But
Yeah.
he went second round.
Second round.
That was a second round draft pick. He ran a 4.77 and was not the most, physically imposing. Got 5'11", 202 pounds.
I'm all the way to 2012.
And he was good. He had multiple seasons of catching 100+ passes. For a while, he was kind of like this short area target hog type of guy until he kind of fizzled out of the NFL. But yeah, I mean, so it doesn't mean you won't be productive, even if you ran up 4.77 at being under 6 feet tall. It's just Jarvis, they may have really liked him. He ran 4.77. Well, we can't take you in the first round like Odell, because they were at LSU together. Well, you ain't Odell Beckham, so
I found one.
If he would have ran low 4.4s, top 20 pick.
I think I found one, Croc. Kendall Wright. You got to go all the way back to Tennessee Titans, 2012. Kendall Wright out of Baylor, pick 20. The very next receiver off the board that year, Croc, after Kendall Wright, A.J. Jenkins to the 49ers, 10 picks later. What a bad wide receiver draft that was. Justin Blackmon had all the talent in the world, went pick 5. Michael Floyd out of Notre Dame to the Cardinals at pick 13. And those were the 4 wide receivers in round 1. But Kendall Wright, it looks like he was 5'10", 196, and ran 4.61 at the combine. Wow.
And he was supposed to be a kind of a quick, bursty kind of guy. And I think my guy Lavelle Hawkins played with him a little bit.
So we got one out of the last 15 years in Kendall Wright, who also was not worthy of that selection in the end. The year before, though, was so much better. A.J. Green, Julio Jones. Then you had the Jonathan Baldwin. Titus Young, he was another smaller receiver, didn't do a lot. That was second round anyway. So there you go. Yeah, so it just goes to show you groupthink and where you think a guy is right now in February pre-combine. You never know where those players are going to end up. And there's a lot of reasons, whether it's positional value or maybe they don't measure up. Maybe there's medical stuff. There's red flags there. Maybe there's off-field stuff you're not sure about. There's a lot of reasons why this stuff could change quite a bit, and why even when you get to April, what you think you're going to see in the NFL draft, you get your mind blown on draft day, because this is 32 independent draft boards that do their own work and have their own guys ranked in their own way. And so you got to be ready that if that player does fall to the San Francisco 49ers, you don't pigeonhole yourself, because you got to have a starting left guard, that you're just going to draft a left guard at pick 27. And if someone falls, you got to be ready to pounce and make that pick, no matter what the position is. That's all I have to say on the subject, Brock. And I don't even care what your mock draft was. We're going to do more mocks, and that's kind of the point of mock. Actually, I'm not done, because that's the other part of this. We're out of time here, Croc. But what are you doing with mock drafts? What's the point of all of it? The point of it is scenarios. What if A happens? Then what do we do with B? Right? If this is how the board falls, what do you do? Oh shoot! All these mock drafts, this thing that you really need is never there. So maybe you need to trade up for that thing. Or maybe the third round is the better place to attack this thing, because that's where the depth is. And you should do this other position over here in this portion of the draft, right? And so it's just going through scenarios. What if this awesome player falls at pick 27? Well, you got to make that pick, right? And so that's why you do all these mock drafts. You're playing with scenarios. You're going through the process so you're ready for the real thing. And teams go through the same stuff on draft day. Like teams, Tom Telesco, I just heard him talk about how he uses the draft simulators, just like we do, Croc.
My buddy, I mean, he called me and was like, I just disagree. If this, and it's not that he didn't like some of the picks, he just thought it was criminal with some of the deficiencies at the pass rushing position for the 49ers to pass over that and draft an off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
And my thing was, that was the best football player that was there at that time. And I am not going to pass on someone I feel is the best football player at a position of need for the 49ers. I mean, who are the linebackers? We are talking about Fred Warner, who's coming off of a snapped ankle. D. Winters, we still don't know if he's good or not. There's stuff I like about him, but I don't know.
Hey, fastest ball carrier for the 49ers in the 2025 season, D. Winters on his pick six. Yeah.
Against the Colts. All right. But I like D. Winters. Is he the guy? I don't know. And then you have one little injury, and all of a sudden it's the others out there. I mean, they're by the last playoff game, I could not name the middle linebackers. Oh, Kendricks. I remember him. There was somebody else. I think his name started with a G.
Garrett Wallow. Okay, first of all, you're disrespecting Garrett Wallow, and you're disrespecting last year's third rounder Nick Martin. Croc, is he not part of this? Was a third round pick. This guy was the 75th pick in the draft. That should be a pretty big part of your plans, right?
So you're going into the season, you're like, all right, I got snapped ankle Fred Warner, who will be good. He'll be good. He'll be ready to
all
go.
pro Fred. I expect it.
I got all pro Fred coming off of a snapped ankle. It was like snapped. I was there at the game. It was sideways. All right. And then I have Nick Martin, who could barely get on the field because he was having concussion issues. Or I draft this Styles kid who is a clone of Fred Warner. Seems like a no-brainer to me. I get it. Want the pass rusher. Yeah. Shout out to my guy Chris. He's like, R. Mason Thomas. Is that his name? R. Mason Thomas?
R. Mason Thomas.
Draft, you gotta draft him. That speed off the edge. All right, you draft him. I'm drafting this freakish linebacker that I feel like is going to be a backer for the Niners for the next 10 years.
You know what, Croc? Raheem Morris might agree with your buddy. He might want himself a stand-up rusher that can scream off the edge. That might need to be our next film session and break down some of these prospects. Because I am a fan of R. Mason Thomas. I think my last comment to that, though, is if you wake up on May 1st and there's something that you have to have on your roster, then you make that happen in March. You don't wait until the draft to get the thing that you have to have. You get
you a speed rusher right now.
Yeah, if you have to have it. Or if you think that it's deep enough, then you wait and you see where that happens. Maybe it's the third round that you find your speed rusher. Maybe it's the fourth round. Maybe it's pick 27. Maybe, okay, a team's calling because Sonny Styles or whoever falls to pick 27. A team's calling you. Okay, well, utilize that value. Then you move back. Then you draft R. Mason Thomas and you have these extra draft picks, right? Make the draft work for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check out the Everydayer Club and make sure you're all subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you listen to this podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.